The moment the plane doors closed, 8A felt like the smallest seat in the world. The captain's laughter had echoed across the cabin, mocking the young girl sitting alone, nervously gripping her backpack. She had just wanted a quiet flight home, but instead, she found herself the target of cruel jokes. Passengers tried to ignore it, but the tension was thick enough to touch. Everyone was watching, some uncomfortable, some angry, but no one spoke up. Then, without warning, the routine hum of the flight turned into a jolt of panic. Alarms blared, the plane shuddered, and the captain's confident voice faltered. A calm, terrifying announcement followed. "Are there any fighter pilots on board?" Suddenly, the girl in 8A wasn't the only one holding her breath. Every passenger's eyes darted around, searching for someone who could help. The mocking laughter seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by fear, disbelief, and the unshakable realization that the fate of everyone on the plane was uncertain. In that moment, everything changed. The girl, the passengers, even the captain, no one could predict what would happen next. And as the plane rattled through the sky, one question hung over them all. Could anyone save them before it was too late? The girl in 8A, whose name was Lily, hugged her backpack tighter, trying to steady her racing heart. She had flown countless times before, but something about this flight felt different from the start. The captain's mocking words had cut deep, but now they were overshadowed by a far more pressing danger. Around her, passengers whispered nervously, some clutching phones, others gripping armrests, as if sheer force could keep the plane steady. Lily's mind raced. She remembered her father telling her stories about fighter pilots and how they trained to stay calm under pressure. She wondered if anyone on this plane had that kind of courage or skill. A man 2 rows ahead fumbled with his briefcase, his face pale. A woman near the window gripped her child, rocking him gently while muttering prayers. Every face in the cabin carried a mix of fear, confusion, and the desperate hope that someone could take control. Meanwhile, the captain's voice came again, strained and uncertain. The autopilot warning lights blinked furiously, casting a red glow over the cabin. Lily's stomach sank. Whatever had caused this sudden emergency wasn't ordinary turbulence, it was something bigger, something no one had seen coming. And in that tense silence, one thought gripped her. They were all on their own until help arrived, and not everyone would stay calm under pressure. The plane shuddered again, sharper this time, and murmurs of panic grew louder. Lily glanced around, noticing small moments that spoke volumes about the passengers' fear. The man in the aisle, who had seemed calm moments ago, now whispered urgently into his phone, voice trembling. Across the cabin, a teenage boy gripped the armrest, eyes wide, clearly trying not to cry. Each person carried their own story, their own stakes, and none of them could escape the reality that the plane was in trouble. Lily felt a strange sense of clarity amid the chaos. She noticed a woman in business attire scanning the cabin, her sharp eyes catching every detail. Maybe she had experience, maybe instinct. A retired engineer muttered calculations under his breath, glancing nervously at the control panel through the small cockpit window. Even the flight attendants, trained for emergencies, were moving with heightened tension, their smiles gone, replaced by grim focus. The captain's voice broke through again, strained and urgent. "We need anyone with piloting experience to identify themselves now." The announcement sent a ripple across the plane. Some passengers stiffened, unsure if they could help. Others exchanged anxious glances, silently wondering if someone brave enough or skilled enough was even on board. In that moment, the mockery in 8A seemed trivial. Fear had united everyone, and the question on everyone's mind was the same. Who could take control before it was too late? The plane lurched violently, throwing passengers against their seatbelts. Screams and gasps filled the cabin, and overhead compartments rattled, as if warning them of what was coming. Lily pressed herself against the window, heart pounding, trying to make sense of the chaos. The flight attendants struggled to maintain order, shouting instructions that barely rose above the roar of fear and the groan of stressed metal. In the aisle, the woman in business attire stepped forward, her calm composure standing out against the panic around her. She scanned the passengers again, eyes locking briefly with a young man in a hoodie who had been silent the entire flight. Something in that look, a silent plea, a recognition, made the cabin feel even smaller, the tension thicker. Lily realized that survival now depended on someone stepping up, someone willing to risk everything. The captain's voice cut through the chaos, harsher now, almost desperate. "We don't have time. If there's anyone trained, do it now." Red warning lights flashed across the cockpit window, and the plane pitched sharply, sending a wave of panic through the passengers. Lily's stomach dropped as the realization hit her. This wasn't just turbulence. Something catastrophic was unfolding, and every second counted. Every pair of eyes in the cabin searched for hope, for a hero, for someone who could turn the tide before it was too late. The air was thick with fear, anticipation, and the unspoken question, who would rise to save them? Suddenly, a jarring alarm cut through the cabin, sharper and more urgent than before. The screens above each seat flickered with warnings. A mechanical failure in the plane's navigation system. Panic surged again, louder than the turbulence itself. The passengers' faces went pale as the reality sank, and this was no ordinary emergency. The plane wasn't just struggling in the sky, it was losing control. Lily gripped the armrest, knuckles white, heart hammering. The woman in business attire turned sharply toward the cockpit, shouting, "We need to stabilize it now." But the captain's voice, once confident, trembled. Then came a voice from the back, quiet but firm. A middle-aged man with a flight jacket and a calm presence announced, "I'm a retired fighter pilot. I can help if you let me." Whispers spread through the cabin. Relief mixed with skepticism. Could someone who hadn't flown a commercial plane in years really save them? Before anyone could respond, the plane shuddered violently, throwing luggage into the aisle. Oxygen masks dropped from above. The retired pilot's face tightened as he glanced at the cockpit, then back at the passengers. "We've got one shot at this," he said. The tension was suffocating. Every passenger clung to hope, fear, and uncertainty. And Lily realized, with a chill, that the stakes were far higher than anyone had imagined. This was no routine flight anymore. Survival would demand courage, skill, and perhaps an unexpected hero rising from the chaos. The retired fighter pilot moved swiftly toward the cockpit, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. Lily and the passengers watched, hearts pounding, as he assessed the instruments, his eyes sharp and calculating. The plane dipped dangerously, jolting everyone violently, but he didn't flinch. "We can regain control, but it's going to be rough," he said, voice calm yet urgent. The captain stepped aside, allowing the pilot to guide the plane. Seconds stretched into eternity as the pilot worked, flipping switches and issuing precise commands. The plane groaned under pressure, but gradually, the violent jerks lessened. Relief began to ripple through the cabin, though fear still lingered in every wide-eyed passenger. Lily gripped her seat, sweat dripping down her forehead, watching the heroics unfold in front of her. Finally, the plane stabilized, gliding steadily through the clouds. The cabin erupted in cautious applause, passengers hugging and thanking each other, gratitude mingling with disbelief. The woman in business attire nodded at the pilot, and even the captain looked humbled, silent for the first time since the flight began. But just as the tension eased, the pilot turned to Lily, his expression serious. "There's one more problem," he said quietly. He pointed to a blinking light on the navigation panel, one that hadn't been there before. A chill ran through the cabin. The emergency might have been managed, but it seemed fate had one final, unexpected challenge left in store for them. The blinking light turned out to be a minor navigation glitch, nothing that could endanger the plane further. The pilot's calm assessment reassured the passengers, and a collective sigh of relief washed through the cabin. Lily leaned back, finally letting herself breathe, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and awe. The chaos that had begun with the captain's mocking words in 8A had transformed into a story of courage, quick thinking, and unexpected heroism. Passengers began talking quietly among themselves, sharing relief and gratitude. The teenage boy smiled at his mother, the man in the aisle finally relaxed, and the flight attendants offered warm, genuine smiles. The woman in business attire shook hands with the pilot, her earlier intensity replaced by respect. Even the captain approached Lily, apologetic and humbled. Realizing the mockery had been cruel and meaningless in the face of true danger, Lily looked around at the cabin. Noticing how fear had turned strangers into a community, united by a shared ordeal, she realized bravery could come from anywhere. A retired fighter pilot called to action at the right moment. The plane continued toward its destination, steady and safe, carrying stories of fear, courage, and unexpected heroism. And though the flight had ended, the memory of 8A and the lessons learned would stay with every passenger long after they landed.